The night over Syria was silent, the kind of silence that hides danger rather than peace. No explosions echoed through the valleys, no gunfire shattered the air, and no one on the ground could see what was coming. High above, far beyond the reach of human sight, American aircraft moved like ghosts through the darkness. Their mission was not random. It was deliberate, calculated, precise. Somewhere below, a man believed he was safe hidden by chaos, protected by distance, and shielded by the disorder of war. His name was Bilal Hasan al-Jasim, an Al-Qaeda affiliated militant leader, and that night, his time was running out. Modern warfare does not begin with armies lining up on a battlefield. It begins with data, signals, patterns, a single intercepted message, a voice on a satellite phone, a shadow moving through drone footage. For months, U.S. intelligence analysts had been tracking fragments of information, small pieces that, when combined, formed a deadly picture. Al-Jasim was not just another militant hiding in Syria's broken landscape. He was a coordinator, a strategist, a connector between extremist networks. Most importantly, he was linked to the deadly ambush that had taken the lives of American soldiers. That ambush had shocked the U.S. military community. It was not just another statistic in a long war. It was personal. 2 American service members and a civilian interpreter were killed, far from home, in a land that many Americans could barely find on a map. For their families, the news arrived in the worst possible way, through official calls, quiet knocks on doors, and folded flags. For their brothers and sisters in uniform, it became a promise. Those responsible would be found. In Washington, Tampa, and military command centers across the world, that promise turned into a mission. The deserts of Syria are vast, unforgiving, and deceptive. During the day, they appear empty. At night, they become alive with movement smugglers, militants, displaced families, and fighters who melt into the terrain like smoke. For extremist leaders like al-Jasim, this chaos was protection. He did not travel openly. He did not use regular phones. He did not trust easily. He lived between safe houses, changed routes, and surrounded himself with loyal men who would die before betraying him. But he underestimated something: American persistence. The U.S. military does not hunt quickly. It hunts carefully. Analysts pieced together his movements. Drones followed patterns of life. Signals intelligence identified familiar voices. Human sources whispered from places no camera could reach. Slowly, patiently, the picture became clear. Al-Jasim was no longer a rumor. He was a target. And targets, in the modern age, are not hunted with armies. They are hunted with silence. The final decision did not come easily. Strikes like these are not made out of emotion, but they are not without it. Every detail was reviewed. Who else might be nearby? Were there civilians? What time minimized risk? What angle would ensure success? Lawyers examined rules of engagement. Commanders reviewed intelligence. Pilots studied maps that most people would never recognize. Then, the order was given. When the aircraft crossed into Syrian airspace, no one on the ground heard them. There was no warning, no chance to run. The strike was over in seconds. Precision-guided munitions did what they were designed to do. When the dust settled, Bilal Hasan al-Jasim was dead. But death alone does not tell the story. To understand why this strike mattered, you have to understand what kind of war this is. It is not a war of territory. It is not about flags. It is about networks, about disrupting leaders who inspire, fund, and organize violence. Men like al-Jasim do not just fight. They recruit, they plan, they radicalize. They turn anger into action and ideology into bloodshed. For extremist groups, leaders are more than commanders. They're symbols. When they fall, it sends a message far beyond the blast radius. For you, Central Command, this strike was not an end. It was part of a larger campaign, an effort to dismantle cells, destroy infrastructure, and prevent future attacks. Officials described it as a reminder that there is no hiding place for those who target American forces. Whether it takes weeks, months, or years, the pursuit does not stop. But behind every official statement, there is a deeper truth. This war is fought by people. By analysts who spend endless nights staring at screens, trying to connect dots before lives are lost. By drone operators who watch targets for days, learning their habits, knowing their faces, understanding that a single mistake can change everything. By pilots who fly into hostile airspace, trusting machines and training with their lives. by commanders who carry the weight of every decision long after the mission ends, and by soldiers on the ground who move through hostile terrain knowing that danger can come from any direction. The ambush that killed American troops was not an accident. It was deliberate. It was planned. And it was meant to send a message. But the US response sent a louder one. It said that time does not erase responsibility. It said that distance does not equal safety. And it said that those who kill American service members will eventually face consequences. Still, this kind of warfare leaves behind uncomfortable questions. Does killing one leader really stop a movement? Does it deter others or inspire them? And how long can a war in the shadows continue before it consumes those fighting it? For the families of the fallen, justice is never complete. No airstrike can bring back a son, a daughter, a spouse, or a friend, but acknowledgement matters. Effort matters. The knowledge that their loved ones were not forgotten matters. In the deserts of Syria, the world moved on quickly. There were no memorials, no news crews on the ground, just a crater-scattered debris and silence. But in military circles, the strike became another chapter in a long, unfinished story. A story about modern warfare, a story about sacrifice, a story about how the battlefield no longer ends at the edge of a map. And this was only the beginning, because the death of Bilal Hasan al-Jasim was not just a strike. It was a signal. The death of Bilal Hasan al-Jasim was not announced with sirens or celebrations. There were no parades, no public ceremonies, and no victory speeches. Instead, there was a short, carefully worded statement from US Central Command, a few lines, a few facts, and then silence. To most of the world, it was just another headline. But within the military community, it carried a much deeper meaning. For the men and women who serve, news like this does not feel abstract. It feels personal. Somewhere, families were still grieving loved ones lost in the ambush that al-Jasim had helped orchestrate. Somewhere, fellow soldiers were still replaying that day in their minds, what they saw, what they heard, what they could not stop. For them, this strike was not about politics. It was about accountability. This is the hidden side of modern war. It does not end when the shooting stops. It lives on in memories, in trauma, and in unanswered questions. Soldiers carry these moments with them long after deployments end. Some wake up at night hearing echoes of gunfire. Others remember the faces of friends who never made it home. Every loss becomes part of them. And this is why the US military does not forget. Hunting high-value targets is not about revenge. It is about prevention. Leaders like al-Jasim are not just fighters. They are organizers, recruiters, strategists. Their power lies not only in what they do, but in what they inspire others to do. Removing them disrupts operations, fractures networks, and forces extremist groups into confusion. But the impact goes beyond tactics. It sends a message. To militants hiding in remote villages and abandoned buildings, it says, "You are not invisible." To families of fallen soldiers, it says, "Your loved ones mattered." To American service members still deployed, it says, "You are not alone." Yet this kind of war is exhausting. It is fought in shadows, without clear endings or victory parades. There is no single moment when a commander can declare, "The war is over." Instead, it becomes a cycle. Threats emerge. Networks adapt, leaders rise, and then they fall. This is the reality of 21st century conflict. Technology has transformed everything. Drones can loiter for hours. Satellites can read heat signatures. Algorithms can detect patterns in oceans of data. But even with all this power, war remains deeply human. Decisions are made by people. Mistakes are made by people. Lives are lost by people. Every strike involves risk. Not just physical risk, but moral risk. Commanders must live with the consequences of their orders. Pilots must live with what they have seen. Analysts must live with what they know. And soldiers must live with what they have lost. The ambush that killed American troops in Syria was meant to terrorize. It was meant to weaken resolve. It was meant to show that US forces could be hit. But history has shown something else. Attacks like these often strengthen American determination rather than weaken it. From Pearl Harbor to 9/11s, from Iraq to Afghanistan, the pattern is the same. When Americans are attacked, the response is not panic. It is persistence. Relentless persistence. The strike on al-Jasim was part of a broader campaign that most people will never fully see. It includes intelligence sharing between allies, raids on hidden compounds, surveillance over remote deserts, and quiet operations that never make the news. It is not glamorous, it is not dramatic, but it is constant, and it never truly stops. For the soldiers currently deployed, this means living in a state of permanent alert. Every convoy, every patrol, every meeting with local partners carries risk. Trust must be built carefully. Situations must be read instantly. One wrong move can change everything. This kind of pressure shapes people. Some become stronger, some become quieter, some carry invisible scars. And yet they continue. Because service is not just a job. For many, it is an identity, a calling, a promise made to themselves and to their country. When a militant leader like al-Jasim is removed, it does not erase the pain of the past, but it can protect the future. It can prevent new ambush, new funerals, and new folded flags. That is the real purpose of operations like this. Not headlines, not politics, not revenge. Protection. Still, the world remains unstable. Syria remains fractured. Extremist ideologies continue to spread online. New leaders will rise, new cells will form, and the cycle will continue. This is the uncomfortable truth of modern war. There is no final chapter, only constant vigilance. For Americans at home, these operations often feel distant. They happen thousands of miles away, in places most people will never visit. But they are connected to everyday life more than most realize. The safety enjoyed in one place is often paid for by danger endured somewhere else. In deserts, in mountains, in skies. The story of Bilal Hasan al-Jasim is not just the story of one man's death. It is the story of how modern conflict works. Quietly, precisely, relentlessly. It is the story of intelligence officers who never sleep, of pilots who fly into darkness, of soldiers who walk into uncertainty, and of families who wait. Wait for calls, wait for returns, wait for closure. And sometimes all they get is a headline. But behind that headline is a complex world of sacrifice, responsibility, and silent courage. The strike in Syria will not be remembered by most people. But for those who understand its meaning, it represents something far greater than a single mission. It represents a promise. A promise that the United States will not forget its fallen. A promise that it will not abandon its people. And a promise that those who attack American forces will not escape accountability. In the end, this is not just a story about war. It is a story about resolve. And that resolve, more than any weapon, is what defines the U.S. military.